I thought she was the problem. For years I was convinced of it. And when I finally left, I felt something I can only describe as relief. Clean air, room to breathe. I was certain I was walking toward the version of my life that had been waiting for me all along. My name is Raymond, I'm 70 years old. And what I'm about to tell you is not easy to say out loud. The marriage ended when I was 58. 31 years, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs, the whole thing. I won't pretend it was all bad because it wasn't. But I'd spent the last 10 of those years quietly building a case against my wife. Every argument, every cold silence, every moment where I felt unseen, I filed it away. Evidence, proof that she was the reason I wasn't happy. And underneath all of that, there was something I never said out loud. I was always watching her, small things, a late reply, a shift in tone, the way she'd pause before answering a simple question. I'd replay conversations in my head looking for cracks. I never found anything real. But that didn't stop me. I trusted the feeling more than I trusted her, so I left. And about 8 months later, sitting alone in a 1-bedroom flat in a city where nobody knew my name, I had a thought that hit me like cold water. I wasn't happy here either. Same restlessness, same low-grade irritability, same feeling that something important was just out of reach. Different furniture, same man. That was the beginning of what I'd call the uncomfortable years. I started paying attention to myself in a way I never had before. Not in a therapeutic way, not at first anyway. More like I just had nowhere else to look, no one to blame in that flat, no one to snap at, no one to quietly resent over dinner, just me and whatever I was carrying. And what I found when I looked was not pleasant. I was someone who, for decades, had been pointing outward. If I was unhappy, it was because of the traffic or the job or the marriage. I had this habit, and I didn't even see it as a habit. I thought it was just accurate observation, of locating the problem outside myself, always just over there, just across the room, just on the other side of that relationship. My daughter called me out on it once, maybe a year after I left. She said, "Dad, you do this thing where you're never actually wrong about anything." She said it quietly, not cruelly, just something she'd been watching for 30 years. I told her I thought that was unfair, and then I drove home and sat with it for 3 weeks. She was right. I think about my ex-wife differently now. Not with guilt exactly, but with something more uncomfortable than guilt. With clarity. She wasn't easy to live with. That part was real. But I had also made her into a container for everything I didn't want to look at in myself. Every time I felt small or frustrated or like my life hadn't gone the way I wanted, I handed it to her. And then I resented her for carrying it. That's a terrible thing to do to a person. I don't think she ever cheated. But I lived like she did. There was a night, I must have been about 62, at my brother's birthday dinner. Big table, lots of noise. I was watching him and his wife. The way she laughed. The way he looked at her. And I thought, why didn't I have that? And then immediately, because of her. Because of the woman I left. And then something stopped me, like a hand on my shoulder. You had 31 years. You were there too. What did you bring to that table? I didn't finish my meal. The years after the divorce, I did eventually see someone. A therapist, older man. Very direct, which I appreciated. He said something early on that I wrote down and kept. The problem with blaming other people is that it leaves you powerless, because if they're the problem, only they can fix it. I'd never thought of it that way. I'd always experienced blame as a form of control. Turns out it's the opposite. I'm not going to wrap this up cleanly. I don't think it deserves a clean ending. What I can tell you is that I am different now than I was at 58. I am less certain. I am quicker to ask myself what I'm bringing into a room before I start assessing what's wrong with the room. I don't always manage it. Old habits are genuinely old, but I notice it now. The pointing outward. The case building. I catch myself doing it, and I stop, and I ask the harder question. My daughter and I are close now. We talk most Sundays. She's careful with me but honest. I think she doesn't fully trust that the change is permanent. I think that's fair. As for my ex-wife, we're not in contact. I wouldn't know what to say. I'm sorry doesn't cover it, and I'm not sure she'd want to hear it anyway. Some things you just have to carry. You did what you did, and now you carry it. If you're watching this and you're somewhere in the middle of blaming someone, a partner, an ex, a parent, whoever. I'm not saying they're innocent. I don't know your life. But I'd ask you to just sit with one question. Not to answer it quickly, just sit with it. What did you bring with you?